Hey guys, it's Bridget with San Jose Seed Company, and we're in the garden, and I want to show you something that doesn't look great. We spend a lot of time looking at beautiful crops and all of the amazing work that we do, but you know, look, we're human, things happen, we don't have control over everything. So let's look at something that doesn't look great and try to figure out why that is. So we've got some garlic here, and you know, one look at this garlic can tell you, it doesn't look fabulous. It doesn't look great. And actually you can see I've got some garlic behind us that looks way better. So you might be thinking, why is that? Well, let's do a little bit of discovery work here in this video and try to see what happened to this garlic. So these obviously don't look right. And there's a couple different things that happen here. One is we know that the soil in this particular bed is not fabulous. And that's just by, you know, by the topography of the garden. This is one of the beds that has received the least amount of amending. And so there's a lot of clay. You can actually tell because when you hold the soil together, well, it's like the kind of clay that you would use to make a clay pot. If you can mold your soil together in a way in which it stays like a nice little clay ball, you know you got a lot of clay. This is not great quality soil for growing alliums in particular, or garlic, because it holds on to a lot of water and it can cause rotting. As we've seen with these guys, they just have really failed to thrive. Now, I do want to note that a common question we get when we have customers that will send us emails and they'll actually show us something like this and go, what happened? Did I not vernalize it correctly? This has nothing to do with vernalization. And vernalization is the process of putting your garlic cloves or the whole bulb inside the refrigerator to expose it to cold for at least 40 days so that you can guarantee that it sprouts. We do that in zone 9 and 10 because we can have very warm winters, and the warm winters may cause the garlic to not actually sprout. If you're in other zones, that probably doesn't matter. You can actually think of it as being very similar to like tulips. If you were in a warm climate with tulips, you vernalize them to get the tulip to sprout. Garlic is very similar. This is not a vernalization issue. This is a compounded issue. First, not great soil. Secondly, overwatering or rotting, which is causing this like slimy effect. I can't tell from the soil what the fertility is like, but I would guess that these crops potentially didn't get enough fertility. Maybe they need to be fertilized a couple more times during the season. And in general, once you get garlic that looks like this, so we're in April, it's almost May, these guys should already be starting to bulk up. At this point, I would say it's a lost cause, and they would want to get pulled so that we can make room for a crop that's actually going to do better. I mean, look at that. That just pulled right out, and the roots just, it's slimy, it's totally rotted. Yeah, that's yucky. That's yucky. These guys are not going to do good. At this point, pull them out. You don't have time to start over, but you have time to amend this to plant something else that will thrive. Things that do really well in kind of poor soil are things like sunflowers. Sunflowers can thrive in really poor soil. Artichokes, we just did a great video on those. Those will do great in poor soil. A lot of your less fussy crops can grow in the soil, and every year that you're growing a crop in the soil, the crop itself is going to make this soil better by breaking up the clay particles, leaving behind organic matter, and introducing more bacteria and just microbiology in general. So these guys obviously didn't do great, and we can look at some that are doing a little bit better. But before I get into that, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you're notified anytime we put out a video, and so that I can help you grow a good garden. Okay, so let's look at some of these other ones over here. So these guys actually look a lot better. Now, interestingly, a lot of times gardeners will say, but they were grown in the exact same soil and the exact same growing conditions. How can a part of the row be barely growing anything and another row have relatively healthy plants? Well, just remember that there is never, ever, ever, ever a situation in the garden where two conditions are exactly the same. There's so many different factors. There's shade, there's sun, there's the mixture of the soil. Maybe there's a little more concrete over there, maybe more compost made it over here. There's so many things that can change how something grows just in a row. Maybe the emitters on that side, were flowing a lot, and maybe they were clogged down here. There's so many different factors. So just remember, it's rarely, if ever, exactly the same, even just 2 inches from one plant to another. So now these guys look a lot better, and you can see the difference. Look at them. It's bigger, it's rounder, it's starting to get a lot fatter. Hopefully these guys will start to bulb up soon. They're not squishy. They really look great. And now I know I dug this guy up, but I'm just gonna stick him right back in the ground. He should be fine. That's one of the beauties of garlic and alliums in general. They're really easy to grow. Now let's look just right next door and see if this plant is telling us something. Now, one of the reasons why we believe that it is overwatering is because look at this splitting that we got on this this onion, I'm sorry. See how it's starting to split? That's usually an indicator that the water has been, that it's been too much water, or it's been a burst of water. So this happens a lot in other areas of the United States where they might get a really, really wet spring. You get waterlogged soil, and then you get rotting, you get cracking, you get bursting. So this thing is still totally edible, but it's on its way to really not being a super great crop, because as it breaks, insects start to get in there, worms, earwigs, all kinds of things start to get in there, and the crop is likely to rot quicker. Also just not be as appetizing in the kitchen. So we really need to pull this out and cook with this immediately. I think this needs to go into French onion soup ASAP. This would not be a good onion for keeping or for trying to cure for storage because it's already cracking. You can see these ones behind here look a lot better. Some are a lot smaller, but they haven't cracked. They just look healthier. And if we just look at the soil too, you can see that the soil isn't as waterlogged over here as it is here. You can see it's just a lot more clay, a lot wetter. Potentially the irrigation is kind of puddling here. Unless you're using pressure compensating drip line, a lot of times the topography of your bed will influence where water settles. Water always settles at the lowest point. So if you have a bunch of T-tape or a drip line that's not pressure compensating, and even if it is, if it's not laid as flat as possible, the water will dribble back down to the lowest point and cause puddling. And you'll likely find areas of your bed that are more wet than others. I talked about some of the things that are wrong. Now, if you're seeing something like this in your garden, it can be overwhelming because there's a lot of different factors to think about, but let's just try to be as strategic as possible in fixing an issue like this. Number one, if you have issues in your garden, first sit down, take some time calmly and collectively, get your thoughts together and try to assess all of the potential issues that you could have. We know in this particular bed that the soil's not great because it's the youngest bed. It's a bed that hasn't had as much amending and compost added to it. And we know from just putting our hands in the soil or digging up the soil that there's a lot of clay. And that clay tends to hold on to a lot of moisture, which can lead to rotting. That also plays into the issue with the irrigation. We know that this year we had a wet year in San Diego and potentially we ran the irrigation too much. And we're seeing signs of that in things like our other crops saying, hey, I've had too much water, I'm splitting. So oftentimes when you're looking at an issue with one crop, you can look to other crops to get an idea about what's going on. So number two, don't just look at the crop that is having an issue, look around to the whole area and see if there's other issues or clues that could tell you what is going on in your soil. And number three, remember that issues can't always be solved overnight. This issue that I'm having here, there's not one fix. I need to take time and grow some crops in this bed that are a little more tolerant of the less than ideal conditions. I named artichoke. Sunflowers are really great. They will grow very easily in this bed. In the wintertime, I can do fava beans. Fava beans will improve the quality of the soil. And every year I do that, the soil will get better, which means my crops will grow better because they will be happier and healthier.